I suspect that Rick is attempting to bamboozle the club by saying that he does not know what a TED Talk is. In 1984, Technology, Education, and Design Conference was an attempt to speak to the intersection of those three topics. And since that time, TED has become a global organization, and they tackle topics of all kinds, now in 100 different languages. TED Talks are typically 18 minutes, and they're designed specifically that way because 18 minutes is long enough to be taken seriously and short enough to be able to be followed. It's also about the length of a coffee break, and it's one of the reasons why TED Talks go viral is someone during a coffee break watches one online and then forwards that to a friend. Many speakers have a 45-minute or 50-minute talk. And so one of the reasons that TED insists on the speeches being 18 is it forces thought leaders to really distill their wisdom down to the one main takeaway that people are likely to remember. I wonder if you ever think that you might be able to someday give a TED Talk. I believe you can. And the reason I believe you can give a TED Talk is because you're already practicing for it right now at Toastmasters. So I'd like to suggest from my experience and also a couple of lessons maybe that we could use to take our Toastmasters Club experience and translate those speeches into a TED Talk. In 2008, I had the opportunity to speak to about 300 denominational, associational, and church leaders from all over the United States. And I was given a 20-minute time slot. And this is the closest thing I've ever done to a TED Talk. I had to prepare for it and to get up and to make it very concise. I'm not exaggerating when I probably spent 100 hours in research, preparation, and rehearsal in order to make my speech work for that 20 minutes. So what I learned in that process and working with our club are two lessons that I think all of us can use. The first is one about rehearsal. You can use Toastmasters speeches as an opportunity to rehearse for a larger presentation. So for instance, you might ask the audience to role play here, the audience that you're going to speak to. You might ask your evaluators to try to spot gaps in your logic or something that does not make sense to an audience as they listen to the speech. But you can take advantage of the many hours of rehearsal it will take to do an effective job in a short speech by practicing those speeches here. Ted Craig, who is a curator for TED, says there's an inverse proportion to the amount of rehearsal time needed to the length of the speech. So in other words, for his 18-minute TED Talk that he gave, he said it took him 18 hours of preparation. Craig goes on to quote Woodrow Wilson, the president. Woodrow Wilson said that if I have to give a 10-minute speech, I need a week to get ready. A 15-minute speech, I can probably prepare in 3 days. A 30-minute speech, 2 days. But if you want me to talk for an hour, I'm ready right now. So given that sort of preparation idea of inverse proportion of length of preparation to shortness of speech, take advantage of Toastmasters as a rehearsal platform for those speeches. The second way that I used Toastmasters Club meetings to help me prepare for that was to try to gauge the amount of content within the times. The great benefit of our meetings is that the speeches are timed. We're able to see how many words fit into how many minutes. And so you can take a 5, 6, and 7-minute speech and you can begin to gauge how much time am I taking with what I'm saying. So for instance, let's say we have heard some great 7-minute speeches in our club. We've heard Fozzie give the speech on the fishbone, which is the root cause analysis technique. Another version of a speech like that would be to talk about an iceberg. So with an iceberg, you have what's above the waterline, below the waterline, and that's what's very deep. There's also another 7-minute speech that I call Uggier and Uggiest. And basically, you make an audience feel the pain before they're ready to have a cure. So those are 3 examples of 7-minute speeches that could be translated into an 18-minute TED Talk. So let's imagine that we take one theme or one idea and we use that first minute of introduction to introduce the theme. And then instead of a full speech on the fishbone, a full speech on the iceberg, and a full speech on the Uggier, and Uggiest, that you just condense those speeches slightly to 5 minutes apiece. And then you conclude with a 2-minute conclusion. So you've then taken 3 Toastmasters speeches and turned it into one longer 18-minute TED Talk. And you've had the advantage of being able to practice each piece of those speeches here in front of the club to be able to master the exact length that each one takes. I'm personally a fan of those speeches and that format because not everyone can relate to root cause analysis, but they can see an iceberg, or they can feel Uggier, and Uggiest. So it gives an audience 3 ways of relating to your theme that gives a variety of experiences for those that are in the audience. I want to encourage you not to see Toastmasters as an end. We don't just come here to do projects, to be evaluated, to have those books signed, to achieve recognition. This is a means. We're here for a reason that's bigger than the club. We're here because we're terrified of public speaking. We're here because we want to overcome that fear. There's something that we want to do. There's something that we want to be. And Toastmasters gives us an opportunity to practice that on the way to whatever it is we're going to do. Now, you may not see yourself as ever giving a TED Talk, and that's okay. But you may have joined this club for many of the reasons that we've joined. It could be that you want to be promoted at work to greater responsibility, and you feel that public speaking skill improvement would help you do that. It could be that there's a great moment that you're about to mark in your life. It could be a toast, it could be a eulogy, it could be any significant moment that you want to mark with a great speech. Or it could be that one day you could be on a TED stage giving an 18-minute talk, distilling your wisdom, advocating for your passion in a way that could possibly even change the world. And to think, it all started here in Toastmasters. Mr. Toastmaster.